focus tonight, Veterans Day. We are honoring and remembering those who served our country, some who paid the ultimate price. Those who are still here, some still face their own challenges. Some veterans tell us they have difficulties reintegrating when they return from their service. There's feelings of loss of camaraderie, there can be medical and mental health issues, and there can be barriers to getting services and even justice. Joining us live in studio tonight is Professor James Holbrook with the S.J. Quinney College of Law at the University of Utah to talk about these issues. Jim, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Rosie, for honoring veterans today.
Jim, let's start off with your service. Tell us about your experience in the Vietnam War.
In 1969, I served in combat in South Vietnam, southwest of Saigon, in an artillery unit. We were very good at what we were doing, and our unit, while the time I was in it, killed dozens of enemy soldiers. And then when I came back to the United States, I had symptoms of being unable to fall asleep, recurring nightmares, startled by loud noises, hypervigilance. I was drinking too much and had relationship issues. These were all symptoms of what was later labeled post-traumatic stress disorder.
First off, I just want to thank you for your service. I was telling you earlier in the break that my family is from South Vietnam, and so we cherish and appreciate our U.S. allies so much, such as yourself. With your PTSD, how long has it been around? Has it gotten better now? And how has it affected your life since then?
In terms of my own PTSD, for years I sort of carried the war around in my head. But I had an opportunity to go back to Vietnam in 1997, and I went back to the same places where I fought, and I realized the war was over. And most Vietnamese, the majority of Vietnamese, were born after what they called the American War. They were really excited about American culture, and I realized that I didn't need to carry the war around anymore with me.
That's a big step, to be able to go back and to be able to move on from that. Let's talk about the significance of traumatic brain injuries, because that's something that a lot of veterans deal with as well.
Today, in the current wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, most of the serious injuries are traumatic brain injuries. And these are caused when a convoy goes past an explosive device and triggers it, and there's a shock wave caused by the blast that hits the convoy. People don't even need to be in the vehicle that's hit. They can be in any of the vehicles in the convoy. And the blast wave jostles their brains inside their heads, and it tears nerves and blood vessels. And sometimes these can be extremely severe and debilitating. So most of the severe wounds today from Iraq and Afghanistan are from TBIs.
I have several people in my close inner circle that have TBIs, and it affects your life for the rest of your life.
Right.
You wrote an essay about the barriers to justice that veterans can face. What are the legal problems that veterans usually have?
You can put them in two piles, civil problems and criminal problems. The civil problems tend to do with getting compensation and disability ratings from the VA. And these sometimes can be very complex. And if they don't have legal assistance, it's easy for claims to be denied. And then they have to be appealed. And that can be very complex. Also, if a service person is discharged with what's called other than an honorable discharge, they're not entitled to compensation or benefits from the VA, and they need legal help to get the discharge upgraded to honorable so that they can have VA benefits.
We have about a minute left and time for one more question. Jim, if you had a magic wand, what would you change in the justice system to make it more amenable for veterans?
it would be nice if every community had a legal veterans clinic so that veterans could get assistance from trained lawyers to help them with their civil and criminal problems.
All right, folks, you've been hearing from Professor James Holbrook with the S.J. Quinney College of Law at the University of Utah. Jim, thank you so much for being here tonight, sharing your story, sharing what you're doing. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Rosie.
Veterans Day began as Armistice Day on November 11, 1919, commemorating the one-year anniversary of the end of World War I. Today on Veterans Day, we remember those who have fought for our country. Many of our veterans are getting older, but we should never forget the sacrifice they made for us. Those challenges can be simple as raising awareness of available resources to veterans. Joining us now is Ninzel Rasmuson, a veteran herself who started the nonprofit Honor Vet 365 to raise awareness of the issues that veterans face. Ninzel, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start off with your service. You are a veteran yourself. Please tell us about your deployment.
Yes, I served between 1989 and 2001 for the Air National Guard, and my time in the service was during the time of the Desert Storm campaign, and that was, I did mishap investigation for the military, and that was my service point.
Thank you so much for serving.
Thank you.
So we know that you now lead the organization Honor 365. Tell us, what was the tipping point, or what inspired you to start this organization?
What inspired me was I had worked in state government for a long time, and I had seen what was happening for our veterans and our first responders, and wanted to make a difference in their mental wellness. And so I founded the organization Honor 365 in March of 2017 to help really change the outlook on what was happening with the suicide throughout the nation.
Now, it's interesting that your organization not only serves veterans and their families, but also first responders. Tell me what made you decide to expand that reach?
The reason why we decided to expand the reach is because many of our first responders are also veterans, and we felt that it was important to serve both our veterans and our first responder population, and not just them, but their families as well. Oftentimes their children are affected as well, and we wanted to have that service available to them to help them.
I had a hunch that was going to be your answers, because a lot of the first responders that we deal with now and we interact with, they have a military background, and it just goes to show that like that seed of service and the desire to serve is like always there for many people.
Yes.
Now, there are 4 pillars to your organization: healthcare, education, employment, and housing. Let's talk about healthcare first, because it can be sometimes the most critical. What services do you provide for veterans in this aspect?
Yes, so we have local organizations here in Utah, as well as a partnership with Ohio State University, who offers outpatient therapy services for our veterans and first responders. And that program offers those services for free to our veterans and first responders in the healthcare arena. And that's been a really important aspect of what they do to help support what we do as a nonprofit organization.
Now, there's the other 3 pillars: education, employment, and housing. Are you seeing veterans needing help with all of these issues, or is there usually one that needs more assistance than others?
You know, it's really individual. Everybody has a different need, and we look at it as in a holistic approach as far as what their needs are. And those conversations that we have with veterans individually are really important, and so we just take that time to have those one-on-one conversations so that we can really help them with what they particularly need.
Now, your organization is little more than 3.5 years old. Do you have an idea of how many veterans have benefited from your program?
We've had hundreds of veterans that have benefited, and I think when we talk in terms of how much, you know, we have done over 43 events over the last 2.5 years, and that's been a really important aspect of what we do, because our touch points have included veterans and first responders and their families, and so hundreds. There's many people that we've touched.
Now, one important thing about veterans is making sure that they're never forgotten. You also have some other programs for visibility. Talk about the 9/11 exhibit that you are bringing in.
So the 9/11 exhibit is an exhibit that we were gifted as an organization from the Netherlands. It actually leaves tomorrow morning from Antwerp, Belgium, and is en route by ship to Galveston, Texas, where it will be met by a semi-truck that's called Hero One, and that semi-truck will come to Salt Lake City, Utah. Since we are headquartered here, we will be given the opportunity to present that 9/11 exhibit to Utah first, and then from there it will be going on a 19-city, 16-state tour throughout the United States in 2021 for the 20th anniversary of 9/11.
How exciting.
Yes.
I'm excited for you guys. We have about 30 seconds left. A short question for you. Where would you like to see services and assistance for veterans in 5 to 10 years?
In 5 to 10 years, we would love to see hundreds, if not thousands, of veterans and first responders and their families be served for whatever it is that they're in need of in employment and education and healthcare and housing, in particular with mental wellness and the services that we know that are important to them, including myself. And that's important because it impacts everything that we do from day to day in our daily lives. We want the best quality of life for the veteran and first responder and their family. And so in 5 to 10 years, if thousands of veterans and first responders can be served, that's what we want to see.
All right, Ninzel Rasmuson, the founder of Honor365, thank you so much for your service, and thank you for being here with us tonight.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Many veterans have mixed feelings about Veterans Day when they are LGBT. They report a need to stay closeted during their service to survive. Many people have reported suffering at the hands of other service members because of their sexual orientation and gender identity. Despite their struggle, they are proud patriots. They love their country, and they are proud to have served.
That was Debbie Hall, Director of Adult Programs at the Utah Pride Center, reading a statement from Michelle Wilcox, who is a social worker and Veteran Care Coordinator for the Salt Lake City VA. Welcome to our third and final In Focus discussion tonight on Veterans Day. Today, the Utah Pride Center raised a newly designed LGBTQ+ soldier flag to honor the more than 1 million service members who are LGBTQ+. Joining us tonight to share her personal experiences are Olivia Jaramillo, a transgender veteran. Olivia, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Rosie, for having me.
Yeah, Olivia, tell me briefly about your military career.
Yeah, so I'm an immigrant from Mexico, and right after high school, I joined the United States Air Force, and that was in 1999. I served tours in Iraq, so I'm an Iraq War veteran. I served humanitarian missions into Africa, and I was able to be stationed in Europe. I led honor guard operations out of Hill Air Force Base, and I was also one of the first individuals to take advantage of the policies that were put in place in 2016 for transgender individuals to be able to openly serve while on active duty. So I've had a very full career, and I'm very, very thankful for the Obama administration for being able to help and start all of those policies.
Thank you so much for your service. We appreciate you so much as a veteran. What was your experience like being transgender and serving in the military?
You know, there were some unique challenges in that by the time I transitioned, I was already in a position of leadership, of management, and it was almost having to gain the respect or have to reestablish that I was still going to be me. It was still going to be me leading a squadron. It was still going to be me leading troops. So, and I was very, very fortunate that on the ground, you know, at every installation, you see soldiers, airmen, seamen. We all come together, and we're all much more diverse and open-minded than we really give ourselves credit for.
During that transition, what would you say was some of the toughest challenges you dealt with, or maybe some of your biggest fears during that time?
You know, one of my biggest fears was that it's hard to say because a lot of the roadblocks that are being put in place are that we're not fit for duty because of medications that we may take or whatever side effects they may cause. That was one of my biggest concerns because as we all know now, there's a lot of medical information that actually backs up that there's not that many side effects. They really do not interfere with military duty as much as possible. So for me, that was a fear, and it was really more of a point for me to prove that we could still serve, and I was very, very fortunate to be able to do so.
Really incredible that you were able to overcome that. What pushed you or brought you to the point where you were ready and comfortable to live your authentic self?
You know, I took advantage of the administration's policies, the Obama administration's policies, and that really occurred in 2016. And I wanted to make sure also that I took advantage of this to show other members, other service members, to show the world that we must live our lives as authentically as possible. And I wanted to give my son an example that he's 9 years old, and I wanted to give him that example that we can live our lives as authentically as possible, regardless of who we are. We deserve to be happy.
What a great example. In 2019, the Trump administration implemented a ban that limited transgender people from serving in the military. How did this impact you? I know at the time, you know, you were already able to be your authentic self in 2016, but when you were seeing this and maybe how it was impacting other members of the military who were transgender, what were your thoughts?
It's disheartening to see, you know, the highest in the land coming after you so publicly on Twitter and so aggressively through policies. But one of the biggest things for me is that this is about money. And we're told that transgender health services are too expensive. But when you look at the numbers, you look at vasectomies performed by the Department of Defense and the money that they spend almost $178 million on vasectomies. And when you take other things into account, like tobacco cessation, $1.6 billion are spent on tobacco cessation. And that is without taking into account the exorbitant amount that is spent on childbirth, pregnancies, which is fine, that is great service. But when you see transgender health service, that the cost is really $2 to $6 million, that it's really not an excuse to say that it is a financial risk to take with this.
Olivia, do you know where a transgender member of the military can go now for help or support?
Yes, absolutely. You know, every unit is does a very good job of taking care of themselves. But for those that may not know, there is a website called spartapride.org, and that is actually a transgender military service members-led organization that actually does a lot of lobbying and advocacy in Washington, D.C. So that is a very, very good place to start. You can actually get support groups that are more local for any service members, regardless of where you are around the world.
In your opinion, what needs to be done to improve quality of life for our transgender veterans?
I think at this point we need to keep lobbying, we need to keep advocating for transgender service members so they can show, they already show every single day that we can do the job, and we don't, there's just no need to put more hurdles in front of us. And I think the more we are visible, the more that we get out there and show the whole world that we can do this, you're going to start seeing those hurdles go down again.
Well said. I know that you are heavily involved in the community. Tell us what you're doing now and what your mission is.
Well, I just got done running for office, so that was a really unique experience. But now what I'm doing is I'm a diversity and inclusion consultant for Equality Utah, and I love working with that organization. But I'm also trying to venture out and do team performance, specifically aimed with a lot of the military knowledge that I picked up as a military leader, as a military manager. And those are some of the things that we're starting. In the community, you know, I always work with organizations with the Utah Pride Center, again, Equality Utah, and then we built up a Davis County Multicultural Committee, which we're looking to keep building upon, which looks out for minority communities such as veterans, the LGBTQ community, and the other minority communities.
Olivia, when do you have time to sleep?
You know, I get it in there, in between.
Very impressive resume, amazing story. Again, I have to thank you for your service. Folks, you've been hearing from Olivia Jaramillo. Thank you so much for everything you've done and your continued service to our community.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you for having me.